Deion's genius exposed prime equity clause is brilliant, but theory's still wrong. Deion built a brand, Shedeur weaponized it, and now the league's old system is on life support.
Prime equity clause. I love those captions. It gets me every time. Let's see what he's talking about.
Shedeur Sanders is going to be one of the richest quarterbacks ever. Prime equity. I want you guys to understand that word, prime equity. Yes.
Obviously, after Deion Sanders, prime equity, catchy, also 2 words, not 1.
Today I did a video about him receiving $14 million in commission from $250 million earned from his jersey sale. A lot of y'all said, cap, that's a lie. When Shedeur signed his deal with the Browns, which was $4.6 million, there was a clause in his contract that was called prime equity. This clause ties into brand legacy and financial future to his on-the-field performance, allowing him to potentially benefit from the value he brings beyond just playing football.
What if I told you that Shedeur Sanders didn't just drop to the 5th round because of attitude or performance issues, but because he had a secret weapon so powerful that NFL teams were literally scared to draft him? There's a viral theory floating around about something called a prime equity clause that could make Shedeur one of the richest quarterbacks in NFL history, and it's got everyone talking. But here's the thing. While Deion's genius business move might be more brilliant than we thought, the conspiracy theory behind why teams avoided Shedeur has some serious holes that nobody's talking about. Today, we're breaking down the real truth behind this viral theory and why Shedeur is still positioned to absolutely dominate the league. Look, I've been watching this story unfold, and let me tell you, the internet is going crazy over this prime equity clause situation. You've got people saying the NFL conspired against Shedeur, that they intentionally tanked his draft stock because they were scared of paying him. But when you really break it down, when you look at the numbers and the logic, man, some things just don't add up. But before we dive deep into this rabbit hole, let me tell you what actually is genius about what's happening here. Because while the conspiracy theory might be flawed, Deion Sanders just pulled off one of the most brilliant business moves in recent NFL history. So here's what went viral. Cash 30 drops this video explaining that Shedeur Sanders has something called a prime equity clause in his contract with the Cleveland Browns. Now, just hearing that name, prime equity, you already know Deion had his fingerprints all over this. The man is literally branding everything after his nickname, and honestly, that's exactly the kind of forward-thinking move that separates legends from regular players. According to this theory, this clause ties Shedeur's brand legacy and financial future to his on-field performance, allowing him to benefit from value. He brings beyond just playing football. We're talking about revenue from merchandise, endorsements, media appearances, the whole package. And here's the kicker. Supposedly, Shedeur would get 5.6% of jersey sales, which if we're talking about $250 million in jersey sales, that's $14 million in his pocket. Now, let me pause right here because this is where it gets interesting. The theory suggests that because Shedeur came into the NFL already as a brand, already with massive social media following, already with name recognition thanks to Coach Prime, the NFL had to cut him a piece of the pie to access that brand power. And you know what? That part actually makes sense. Think about it. Shedeur wasn't just another college quarterback coming into the league. This kid had millions of followers before he even got drafted. He had brand deals, he had merchandise, he had a whole ecosystem built around him. So if you're an NFL team and you want to tap into that, you better believe you're going to have to pay for it. But here's where the theory goes off the rails, and this is what we need to talk about. The conspiracy part suggests that NFL teams knew about this clause and intentionally let Shedeur drop in the draft because they didn't want to deal with it. They supposedly tried to ruin his marketability because they knew whoever signed him would have to give him this percentage.
I caught that. The commission and then the suppression of his marketability just doesn't add up logically. They both don't go together. If you're on commission, I'm trying to get you out there to get some of this money. I'm getting most of it. Go get it. So that didn't add up. What also didn't add up was the fact that this clause was for the team. This clause is for the Cleveland Browns, as Cassius 30 says. That's not the NFL. The Cleveland Browns are a part of the NFL, but you're not getting the money from the NFL if this is a Cleveland Browns clause. Now, he said jersey sales, which is an NFL issue. So that needs to be clarified. I could be wrong. He could be wrong. It could be wrong. But I'm just saying, you can sign a deal. Cleveland Browns, you owe me ABC. NFL's like, they better get it out of their revenue sharing. They better get it out the part that we giving them, the check we give them, not the check that we get.
Hold up. Let me break down why this doesn't make sense. And I'm going to use some real estate logic here because it's the perfect comparison. If you're in real estate and you have an agent who's going to make you 94.4% of the commission while they only get 5.6%, what are you doing? You're pushing that agent to sell as much as possible. You want them out there grinding, making deals, bringing in revenue because you're getting the lion's share.so if these NFL teams knew Shedeur had this clause where they get 94.4% of the jersey sales and brand revenue, while he only gets 5.6%, why would they try to suppress his marketability? That's like shooting yourself in the foot. You'd want him to be as big as possible because you're making most of the money off his success. The logic just doesn't add up. If anything, teams should have been fighting harder to draft him knowing they could capitalize on his existing brand, while only giving him a small percentage. It's actually a better deal for the teams than what they typically get from revenue sharing with other players. But here's what I think is really happening, and this is where we need to give Deion Sanders his flowers. Whether this exact clause exists or not, the concept behind it is absolutely genius. Deion looked at the landscape and said, "My son isn't just a football player, he's a brand. And if you want access to this brand, you're going to pay for it." Think about the precedent this sets. For decades, NFL players have been generating massive revenue for teams in the league through jersey sales, merchandise, and brand partnerships, but they've only gotten a tiny slice of that pie. What Deion potentially did here is flip the script. He said, "Nah, we're not doing business the old way. My son brings value beyond just what he does on the field, and we want to be compensated accordingly." And you know what? Shedeur deserves it. This kid has been putting in work since he was at Jackson State. He's been building his brand, connecting with fans, creating content, being accessible to the community. When he got to Colorado, he continued that grind. He threw for over 5,000 yards behind a struggling offensive line. He showed leadership, he showed resilience, he showed the exact kind of character you want in a franchise quarterback. But let's keep it real about why he actually dropped in the draft. It wasn't some conspiracy about a prime equity clause. It was simpler than that. It was about perception and politics. The NFL is still an old boys club in a lot of ways. You've got scouts and executives who are uncomfortable with players who come in with strong personal brands and family support systems. They want players they can control, players who are going to be grateful just to be there. When you have someone like Shedeur who comes in knowing his worth, who has a father figure like Deion Sanders backing his plays, who isn't afraid to speak his mind, that makes some people uncomfortable. They see the confidence and call it cockiness. They see the brand awareness and call it distraction. They see the family support and call it baggage. But what they're really seeing is a young man who refuses to accept less than what he's worth, and that scares them. The attitude narrative is particularly frustrating because it's so transparent. When Tom Brady was confident, they called it leadership. When Aaron Rodgers spoke his mind, they called it intelligence. But when a young black quarterback with famous father shows that same confidence, suddenly it's an attitude problem. And let's talk about that he didn't run the 40 criticism that keeps getting thrown around. Man, please. This kid threw for 5,000 yards. He was putting up video game numbers while getting pressured on almost every play. You want to see his speed? Watch him escape the pocket and make throws on the run. Watch him process defenses at the line of scrimmage. That's the speed that matters for a quarterback. The truth is, Shedeur got caught up in a perfect storm of factors that had nothing to do with his actual ability to play football. You had teams overthinking the Deion factor. You had scouts nitpicking every little thing because they were looking for reasons to justify their discomfort. And you had a media narrative that painted him as potentially problematic. But here's the beautiful irony in all of this. By dropping to the 5th round, Shedeur actually ended up in a better position than he would have been as a first-round pick. Think about it. He goes to Cleveland with a chip on his shoulder, with something to prove, and with a contract that potentially includes groundbreaking language about brand partnerships and revenue sharing. Now he gets to show all 31 teams that passed on him multiple times exactly what they missed out on. And trust me, when Shedeur starts balling out in Cleveland, And he will. Those same scouts and executives who overthought his draft stock are going to be kicking themselves. The prime equity clause, whether it exists exactly as described or not, represents something bigger. It represents a shift in how players think about their value and their leverage. It represents the next generation of NFL players refusing to accept the status quo when it comes to revenue sharing and brand partnerships. And that's where Deion's genius really shows. He's not just coaching his son to be a better football player. He's coaching him to be a better businessman. He's teaching him to understand his worth beyond just what he does on Sundays. He's preparing him for a career that extends far beyond football. Look at what Deion did with his own career. He wasn't just prime time on the field, he was prime time as a brand. He leveraged his personality, his style, his confidence into opportunities. That went way beyond sports. Now he's teaching his son to do the same thing, but with even more sophistication and business acumen. The fact that people are even talking about clauses like this shows how the landscape is changing. Players are getting smarter about their contracts, more strategic about their brands, more demanding about their worth. And that's exactly what needs to happen. So, while the conspiracy theory about teams avoiding Shedeur because of some revolutionary contract clause might not hold up to scrutiny, the underlying concept is absolutely brilliant. Whether it's called prime equity or something else, the idea of players demanding a bigger piece of the revenue they generate is long overdue. And let's be real about something else. Shedeur is going to be just fine regardless. This kid has talent, he has work ethic, he has leadership qualities, and he is one of the greatest athletes of all time as his father and mentor. The draft position was just a number. What matters now is what he does with the opportunity. I predict that within 2 years, people are going to be talking about Shedeur Sanders as one of the most exciting young quarterbacks in the league. He's going to prove that all the overthinking about his attitude and his father's influence was just noise. He's going to show that sometimes the best pick isn't the highest pick, it's the right pick. The teams that passed on him are going to watch him succeed and wonder how they let media narratives and unfounded concerns cloud their judgment about a player who had all the tools to succeed at the next level. But here's what I want to know from you. Do you think the prime equity clause is real? Do you think Deion actually negotiated something that revolutionary? Or do you think this is just another internet theory that sounds good but doesn't hold up under scrutiny? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I want to hear what you think about this whole situation. And while we're talking about business moves and getting your money right, let me keep it real with you about something that could actually change your financial situation right now. If you're dealing with credit card debt, student loans, medical bills, any kind of debt that's keeping you up at night, you need to check out the link in the description for Monitor Debt Resolution. They've helped thousands of people reduce what they owe by dealing directly with creditors, sometimes cutting balances by 30, 40, even 50%. This isn't about taking out more loans or moving debt around. This is about actually getting rid of it through proven debt settlement programs. Many clients become debt-free in 24 to 48 months. Don't let debt hold you back from building your own empire while we're watching Shedeur build his. The bottom line is this: whether the prime equity clause exists exactly as described or not, Deion Sanders just showed every NFL player in their families how to think differently about contracts and leverage. He showed them that you don't have to accept the traditional way of doing business just because that's how it's always been done. Shedeur Sanders is going to be successful because he has talent, because he has support, and because he has a mindset that refuses to accept limitations. The draft was just the beginning of his story, not the end. And I guarantee you, the teams that passed on him are going to regret it sooner than they think. So there you have it. The prime equity clause might be genius, the conspiracy theory might be flawed, but Shedeur Sanders is still positioned to win big in this league. What do you think? Am I right about this whole situation, or am I missing something? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure you subscribe to this channel because we're going to keep following this story as it develops. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next in the Shedeur Sanders saga. Hit that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.